Welcome back to my Catalina 27 channel. I'm waiting on parts before continuing with the interior, which gives me some time to get familiar with the hull-to-deck joint on the Catalina 27s. According to Catalina and interviews I found on YouTube with Catalina's longtime engineer and designer, the man himself, Gerry Douglas, most, if not all, the Catalina 27s have the same exterior overlapping flange type of hull-to-deck joint. I'm going to just, there doesn't seem to be any problems, so I'm just going to put some 5200 on the bottom of the flange there, but let's hear what Gerry has to say.
For many years, the earlier Catalinas used an external flange, often called a shoebox type, where the deck overlapped the hull. Perfectly fine, works very well, and is almost leak-proof.
After yanking out the insert, I found that the molding was in 3 pieces, and there's the seam back there in the corner. And there's so many screws, I want to use a screw gun, but I didn't want to jack up the screws, so it's amazing how many Phillips head screw bits don't really fit the screws. Like that one's pretty close, but no, it's too loose, it's going to strip out. And yeah, this is just a joke, that one's too big. And oh, here's one, this one should fit, it's a PH2, and well, not really. What the hell? So fortunately I had like 10 of them, so I kept trying. And here's a Bosch one, and voila. You can just feel it go in. And it actually holds the screw, so that's how you know it's a good fit. Uh-oh. And that's what's underneath your rub rail after about 100 years. So yeah, it needs a lot of cleaning before I can reseal that. So I sanded it down, but this is California, so I'm not allowed to show you how I did it. Then I hit it with the buffer, because I can't get the edge real nice with the moldings on there, so I just buffed the crap out of it. Buffing on a ladder is a lot of fun, you should try it. Apparently, you're supposed to start a little slow and medium pressure, and then as it starts to dry out, reduce pressure and increase the speed. So I'm really not an expert at this, but it came out all right. So I did all the top of the molding section. I don't know what you call it. I guess it's the rail. But yeah, that came out all right. And then on to removing the chain plates on the stern for inspection and cleaning and rebedding. I sanded down the pads where they were riding, and they just didn't seem very flat. So I sanded them down really well, but I had to take off all the old sealant. And yeah, with a file, trying not to open up the holes too much, and just sanding down. And then I had to use a hacksaw blade to dig out the sealant that was in the corners, and then abrade the crap out of it so I could re-glass it. Yeah, it took a while. It took a long while, but yeah, nothing's gonna stick to it, so you got to remove it all. So I got it all off and cleaned it all up, ready for another layer of glass, and I just think it'll be better. It's not going to make the pad much thicker. I removed quite a bit of material with the sanding anyway, so yeah, should be all right. Had to use the tried and true and trusted G-Flex epoxy, which is just the best stuff ever, I think. It's toughened epoxy. It stays flexible, a little bit of flex to it, which is what you really want most of the time when you're using epoxy, I think, because the boat's made of fiberglass. It's going to move and flex a little bit, so you want to use something that might have a little bit of flex, more flex than the material that you're gluing up. So yeah, G-Flex epoxy by West Marine or West Systems. You can get it at West Marine, you get it on Amazon. It goes a long way actually, and it's 1-to-1 mix, so it's really easy to mix small batches of it. You can wet out the fiberglass with it. You can thicken it up. Works like a charm. So I just wet it all out. Put a lot on, actually. It doesn't look like it, but I'm putting it on pretty thick. I'm getting inside the holes, help seal that up, and just take up some of that space I made by filing them out and getting all that sealant out of there. So yeah, didn't take too long. And by too long, I mean hours and hours. Probably 5-6 hours to do all 3 of those pads. But if you're going to take your boat offshore, and I'm going to take this thing offshore, you can't half-ass it. Half-assing it just always bites you in the ass. So just do it right the first time. Don't worry about it. But now it's time for a little break.
In 2011, NASA launched the last space shuttle mission. As a publicity stunt, the crew included Academy Award-winning actor Michael Caine. But during a spacewalk, he got a little tipsy and floated away.
Oh, etc.
Frozen for centuries in the dark reaches of space, he was finally defrosted in the year 2354.
Not as strange as wearing a spacesuit in a battle cruiser that has full pressurization.
This is vintage. And if I hook up a vacuum to this little port down here near my business, ding dong, proper amount of suction, ooh la la, splat.
That was Michael Caine in space.
When you're applying fiberglass to anything, it's absolutely imperative that you soak it out properly. There can be no bubbles and no dry spots. It has to be completely, absolutely wetted out completely. A lot of people put the resin on the glass before they apply the glass to the structure. These are just small little pieces, so it would just pull it apart if I tried to do that. So every time I'm putting that brush up there, it's full of more epoxy. All it will hold. So you can see how many brush loads of epoxy just for that little tiny section. And I'm putting it on with a very light touch. So that's how you do it. And this is what the molding looks like underneath. It's got some corrosion. Looks like it wasn't rinsed off very well every time it came back to the dock, or went on the hard, whatever. So I wire brushed it, and wire brushed it, and wire brushed it. Yeah, that's about 4 hours of wire brushing. So I got all the grooves really clean because there was some salt corrosion. It's mostly just salt deposits inside the grooves where the insert rides. So then when I was done with that, I took some foam and put it behind the sandpaper because I didn't want any flat spots when I sanded it down, because the anodization was just pretty much trashed. So I just sanded it down pretty lightly, actually. Didn't take long. I didn't want it perfect. I just want it clean and salt free, because I'm going to wax it and keep an eye on it. If I have to change it in the future, I will, but I don't think I will. I think it'll be fine. So I sanded it down with some 320 and then a red Scotch-Brite. Rubbed the crap out of it, buffed it all out, the whole top and bottom. I didn't do the bottom as well as I did the top, because you can't really see the bottom. I just wanted it clean. So buffed the crap out of it with some Scotch-Brite, and then I followed up with some aluminum polish, but just really lightly, just to take off any kind of little bit of residue on there. And it came out like that, which is, I don't know, it's fine. Looks a lot better than it was. I'm happy with that. I'm gonna run it. The chain plates, I just put a piece of Scotch-Brite right underneath the sander and just went to town. It didn't take very long at all, actually, about 10 minutes. But I did the edges, the top, and the bottom. Yeah, so it actually took about 10-15 minutes each, because they're already kind of a brushed finish, so you're not going to really polish them up to a mirror or anything. I just wanted them, again, all the salts off, any little surface rust, if there wasn't any. they were in really good shape. So that's a hot tip. Works like a champ. It's not dangerous. You can't really hurt yourself doing it. So yeah, good hack beats doing it by hand. So now, my friends, it's time to break out the often imitated but never duplicated mother of all adhesive sealants, the strongest, longest lasting, most tenacious, sometimes disastrously permanent single part polyurethane from hell, the 3M 5200. May God have mercy on us all. Now it's time to take a more gentle tack with the medium strength, fast curing, UV stable 3M Fast Cure 4000 UV. It even sounds kinder, and it is. If you're sealing something, and some of the sealant will be exposed to the harsh, judgmental eyes of those new boat owners and the sun, this stuff is the way to go. The design of the attachments for the stern chain plates on the Catalina 27 is such that the load exerted has two components, vertical and horizontal. The vertical load is resisted by the shear strength of the fasteners and the relative incompressibility of fiberglass reinforced resin. The horizontal component is resisted by the torsional strength of the fasteners and the shear strength of the fiberglass and resin laminate, which is spread out over a larger area by the backing plates. The loads transmitted from the rig to the hull are not static. They alternate between loaded and unloaded continually, often many times a second, and they are immense, often exceeding thousands of pounds. These changes can result in extremely rapid accelerations and decelerations, that is, shock loading of the fasteners if any play exists between them and the hull, leading to deformation and ultimately failure of the attachment, and that is often catastrophic. However, as Gerry describes here, not necessarily.
The way the rigs are stayed, as you know, all of our boats have inline uppers, inline intermediates, 4.5 lowers. You can lose any single wire on the boat and you're not going to lose the rig. Unlike boats that might have single chain plate attachment points on deck, where if one chain plate goes, say with a swept back spreader rig, lose one piece of wire, that rig's going over the side. If you don't have any backstays and you have all the mass supported in the aft just by one upper that's swept aft, lose that piece of wire, that rig is going over the side. There's no second chance with that. Mm-hmm. All our rigs are very well stayed, so I think that gives you a real comfort factor and safety at sea, that any one piece of wire is not going to mean the loss of the rig. The boats are also a little bit over-rigged. We tend to generally be very conservative in our wire specifications, so we built a lot of safety into the rig itself. We've had many of these boats circumnavigate safely, and I think that speaks volumes to the boat's capability.
All right, thank you.
It's important that this loading and unloading is dampened. The vertical loads are dampened essentially by only the elasticity of the wire, which is very minimal but functionally present due to the length of the shrouds. The horizontal loads are substantially lower and dampened primarily by the flex of the plates themselves and the significantly higher elasticity of the bedding sealant. You can add or subtract these compression rebound properties by adjusting the amount of sealant sandwiched between the plates and the hull. I applied a generous amount of 4000 sealant and fit the plates, tightening them only partially as to leave about a 32nd of an inch of sealant between the plates and the hull, then let it fully cure before torquing them down completely. I was careful to wipe off any extra sealant that was on the exposed threads inside the boat to make fitting the backing plates, washers, and nuts a whole lot easier. The way these plates attach to the hull, it leaves a gap between the plate and the hull on the bottom bolt. So I cut some polyurethane down to make a spacer that I can use to tighten down the fastener without actually applying a bending force on the plate itself, which I thought was a bit better. Plus, I didn't want to leave the gap there because, I don't know, potentially it could snag a line or something. It just didn't look right. So I put some polyurethane on there, and it worked out pretty good. She'll be right. I didn't have anybody to help me hold the screws on one end while I put the nuts on the other, so I put some tape on the outside. And with no one around to help me, I just tied up the molding to the boat on each corner and started putting the sealant on all the holes. And there's a lot of holes. Made sure I pushed it inside, got a lot of it into the hole itself, and started pinning it down. Starting in the corner, I pinned it there, and I went to the other corner and pinned it there, and then onto the end, and then worked my way backwards from there. I didn't know it at the time, but this job was more about the chain plates than the molding, because the molding goes over the rear chain, the stern plates on the back there. So yeah, I'm happy with it. Looks a lot better than it did, and I know that the joint's not going to leak no matter what happens to that rail. How much water gets up on there, it's not going to leak, guaranteed. Here's a little before and after. I still haven't done the other two pieces, but this one came out pretty nice, and the other two won't be nearly as time consuming as this one was with its two chain plates in the back. If you find these videos helpful, you learn something, give us a like, comment below, subscribe, you know the drill. And join me next time when I splash the boat. Yeah, we both know that's a lie. But anyway, I'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching. Bye.